In your quest to slay monsters, be wary not to become one yourself. But if you are looking to soak yourself in the blood of your enemies, you've come to the right place. Mortal Sin is a roguelike hack-and-slash dungeon crawler that has recently left early access to welcome us in its world of endless cycles of death and rebirth, absolution, and sin. If my description sounds like a lot of buzzwords, it probably is. But it has the merit of being honest about the game, and it's a good way to sum up what we're going to delve into. To put it simply, Mortal Sin is the most fun I have had in recent history of an FPS since Ultra Kill, and this feeling only grows the more I keep playing it. Now, unlike Ultra Kill at the time of this script, this one is a full experience, and instead of guns, for the most part, and acrobatics, you will embark on a blood-soaked journey of melee combos, equipment looting, and ability min-maxing. The game is developed by a single person by the name of Nikola, with the soundtrack being composed by Mikko Norjärvi. For both of them, this seems to be a first experience with a published piece of work. And what a game this is. I'm still going to preface this review by saying it might not be an experience for everyone, given the genre we're discussing. I know that I myself am not too fond of dungeon crawlers and especially the procedural generation type, but I was nevertheless interested. I'm also saying this because it's a very loaded game, visually and mechanically, so I recommend you get to know what you're getting yourself into before embarking on this journey. What I would like to make clear from the get-go is that the loaded nature I was alluding to is not something I'm warning you about lightly. Although you will get accustomed to its interface and find it easier to navigate with enough time, the game has a great quantity of information for you to absorb when you first step into its gameplay. So much so that you might be asking yourself what you're looking at when seeing someone playing it. Despite me comparing it to the likes of Ultra Kill, mainly for how jubilating the moment-to-moment combat feels, the two diverge significantly. Instead of a game that rewards movement and precise aiming, Mortal Sin is an experience that focuses more on you creating a build around a class and making use of the full potential of an arsenal with the combo system that is unique to your character. You're encouraged to switch up your weapons and moves to deal with your opponents, but you don't have to be finicky about your aiming since you'll be dealing with crowds upon crowds of enemies with a big chunk of steel as your weapon most of the time. But actions speak truer than words, so let's see what your first experience looks like. You start the game with 3 difficulties to choose from. Path of Absolution is absolutely fine to go with during your first run, but nobody will fault you for choosing Path of Grace considering you're starting out. Path of Torment is there for you to experience the absolution of your own ego if you consider yourself prepared for a beating. Starting fresh, you only have access to the Berserker class, a tanky warrior with a very large sword. Your adventure begins in the graveyard, the hub area you'll spend some time within in order to discuss with the maiden who saved your life in the trailer of the game. There is also an NPC close to the dungeon named Divino, who can explain to you the different combat mechanics of the game if you need more in-depth explanations than what your instincts might tell you. Let's say you choose to explore the dungeon as your first area. You'll quickly get to use a good amount of different moves, such as normal and charged attacks, a parry, a kick, and a shoulder bash that also acts as your sprint as long as you hold down the key. You are also given a class ability, which in the Berserker's case grants you a lunge and invincibility on your next attack. Inputting certain sequences of attacks lets you create a combo with a specific effect, be it triggering a projectile, resetting a cooldown, and many more things that I cannot begin to cover here. It is definitely something you're intended to play around with depending on your preference of class, and the game is more fun when trying to experience each of them one at a time. Playing the Berserker, you have the healthiest class that uses big swords, but you'll get to choose more squishy characters as time goes on. There are ranged options that can allow you to kite your enemies, but with smaller health pools and other kinds of trade-offs. Traversing the areas of Mortal Sin will have you going from room to room, fighting on hordes of enemies and triggering pressure plates in order to advance. In between those rooms, you'll get to antechambers of sort that allow you to customize your build by choosing between 3 passive abilities. Each passive has its own set of advantages and detriments that allow you to pick your blessings and your poison. Most of said poison will be the equipment piece that deteriorates the fastest. Looting will get you better equipment with better stats and most of the time another passive effect, but you will have to hang on to your best pieces of equipment and maintain them using the wizarding oil that allows you to restore the mana of your items. Your character mainly has two bars to worry about during a fight: your health and your guard meter, which are pretty self-explanatory. But you also have to keep an eye on your equipment bars on the right side if you want to be able to benefit from your associated passives or just your statistics. Your passive abilities can also interact with other abilities and mechanics, such as dismemberment being a core part of crowd control, as well as a good way to combine different effects that trigger depending on what you're aiming at. For example, a passive that allows you to instantly kill an enemy by chopping its head off is a good call, but combining it with another that can freeze nearby enemies when you chop off a limb is a good way to make sure you have a backup in case the decapitation failed to kill them. Because yes, loss of limbs, and especially the head, is not the end for your enemies, although it definitely is for you. You'll have to pick and choose your abilities depending on what you want your playstyle to be, whether you wish for more durability, more aggressiveness, and so on. Getting to the end of the room a first time allows you to unlock permanent rewards, like the amount of healing flasks you can carry, the gold you can keep in between runs, and other passive rewards that will all follow you on your subsequent runs. A session of Mortal Sin, which we'll call a cycle, is typically composed of 3 areas to visit. You will automatically unlock the forest after doing the dungeon and the cave on your first cycle, but you'll notice that each area can be played either as your first, second, or third. You'll have to complete each of them as your third expedition if you want to unlock Aquarium Land. An optional area which you'll come to unlock is the Trial of Resolve, a fighting arena that can yield some passive skills as a reward. Inevitably though, you'll fall to something that's meaner and mightier than you. But death is far from the end, and the experience you gain from this life will translate into the next as you unlock more rewards and more classes to play with. You might be forgiven for being under the impression that Mortal Sin is a very complex dungeon crawler despite it sharing many similarities with other titles. And at times it can definitely feel like it has too much information for you to absorb, but the amount of depth it has is precisely what separates it from the competition. For example, the dismemberment system I was talking about just earlier makes it possible to choose what situations you'll be dealing with during an encounter. Do you want enemies not to be able to swarm you from up close? Cut off all their legs. Do you want them not to know where you are anymore? Cut off all their heads. Of course, different enemies will require different tactics, and will have different feelings about premature loss of limbs. So watch out for headbutting and kicking. Far from being just a visual flavor, these behaviors also interact with curses, another bargain system that can influence dismemberment among other things. One of said bargains could allow you to get better statistics in exchange of which dismembered enemies will start to go berserk. But I don't want you to get the wrong impression either, as Mortal Sin isn't a game where you constantly need to up the ante and hope that you can come out on top. The more you strategize, the better you stand a chance against the onslaught, meaning you can eventually recover from whatever disadvantage you have in one department. In this regard, it also features other ways to customize your experience so that you are not too overwhelmed, like the oaths you can select at any point during your run. These gameplay modifiers can drastically change the progression by changing the layout of the dungeons you're exploring down to the nature of the equipment you'll be finding on your way to the final area. Quests and unique items will also allow you to make progress with consistent sources of power that keep the adventure fresh and fair. And what I like most about these gameplay mechanics is how complementary to the core gameplay they can feel. Mortal Sin is among the few games that are not just easy to play but hard to master. It also isn't essential to know all of its components by heart in order to have fun with it. It has more than enough visual and sound feedback for you to enjoy brute forcing your way through hardships until it asks real commitment. And I find that you can have a lot of fun hitting whatever comes your way, even if it means killing your run in under 10 minutes. There is also a lot for you to unlock and take advantage of on your way to learning combos, weapons, and other modifiers that can make and break your run, so try to have some fun on the way there. Since I'm feeling very enthusiastic about a variety of classes you can choose from, I'm going to let you on what each of them do, but you can meet me in a bit if you prefer to hear about the visuals. Aside from the Berserker, which is your average tank, you have 14 classes which can be unlocked by playing the game and getting farther, and some with specific requirements. Reaper is a weak but volatile class that uses sickle and scythe weapons. Its ability allows you to take the invulnerable form of a bonesaw that cleaves through enemies. It also starts with a passive that launches ghost versions of your weapon a bit farther. Good if you have ADHD and can manage your mana well. Paladin is also a tank, but better. It has defense, and it has a shield, allowing for bigger parry windows. Get used to striking with a mace. Its ability allows it to send holy beams of God when blocking an attack or when dashing. Great defensive option. Mage is surprisingly durable for a wizard. It uses staves to cast various spells like a spectral mace, frost breath, and let's not forget, close quarter firebomb. Its ability is to Monk is a freak of nature who goes bare fists at everything and still manages to be both tanky and speedy. No need for a weapon with this character. Its ability is a dragon punch that makes everything explode. Pirate is a lover of the sea who will use an arsenal of sabers and pistols on land to shoot people in the head and relieve its opponents of their shoulders' burden. Not very durable. You'll have to make sure your enemies disappear before hitting you with a black powder bomb that destroys anything it touches. Gladiator is a very angry class that shouts at your enemies. Uses an axe, but any melee weapon you want will do so long as it means hitting things. You're durable and very angry, so make sure that your foes know it and get stunned by your ability. Hunter is a zoner class that uses polearms to poke enemies at a safe distance. You're fast and you're proficient at impaling heads. Its special ability allows it to become invisible and fast to reposition and critically hit its enemies when exiting its cover. Vampire is a vampire. You don't have health potions this time, so you must send blood orbs to leech on your enemy's health before you bleed yourself to death. Your blood magic weapons are akin to the mage's. Worry not, your ability allows you to restore your HP in case of emergency. Duelist, or as I like to call it, scissor hands, uses long katanas and is proficient at any dual weapons you prefer. Your job is being a lucky bastard that preys on critical hits and overwhelming your enemies with a flurry of attacks that your ability will gladly add onto. Struggler has a hard life. It's a jack of all trades with no particular strengths that can use any weapon and any skill you want. Get creative with your combos, which your ability will help with since it adds onto your meter, makes you invulnerable for a time, and prevents you from losing your combo meter. Oh my god. Hoarder is a greedy class that lets you gather more essence and gold from your enemies while being invincible for a time. Anything you kill during this short period is a financial return. Prioritize using your fists. Martyr is a professional sinner that converts curses into damage. Starting with 6 curses, your goal is to become the truest glass cannon by accumulating more of them. Your ability allows your sin blade to deal bonus damage for each curse you have. Stalker is a creature of shadows that uses cleavers to strike aggressively. You're very speedy and very squishy. Use your smoke bomb ability to disorient your enemies and strike fast before you die. Warlock is essentially a better mage. Your staves are good as slapping sticks, but your ability allows to insta-cast your spells. Note that parrying resets your ability cooldown, so make sure to become a parry god to set the world ablaze. And finally, Enigma is a special class that randomizes all your statistics, your starting passive, and your ability for a chaotic result. You could get anything, and I do mean anything, but that will be up to God. If you stuck with me through this very short summary, congratulations. It was extremely oversimplified, but hopefully some of those playstyles have stirred up in you the curiosity to play the game for yourself. Each class has its own strengths and restrictions, but most importantly its own set of combos for you to discover and plan around to get the best of their respective powers. Mortal Sin is very generous with the amount of tools it lets you use, and I can't find a class that I haven't enjoyed to discover. Some of them are way more powerful than others, but I wouldn't say any are weak. It's a remarkable act of game balance, especially when you consider what the final boss. In all honesty, I would be damned if I didn't properly discuss one of the most striking aspects of Mortal Sin. The stylistic direction it chooses to go for is not something I have seen in a lot of first-person games. It's very stylized in a way that makes it look like a dark visual novel. You will usually be treated to only a couple of colors on screen at the same time, which means you will be plunged in very harsh shadows that greatly impact the scenery. The couple of remaining colors denote your enemies a lot from their environment, and you will also be glad to see that each body part can change color depending on which one you're targeting the most. Each area has its own identity that lets you explore a unique part of Mortal Sin gameplay-wise, but each are also striking visually, especially whenever you interact with the portal dimension, which is a very mystical place to be plunged into. Each place you go is a reminder that you're trapped with an evil entity that has its eyes set on you. In terms of influences, you can trace the style back to metal and rock album covers by Branca Studio, one of which Nikola is said to have taken inspiration from. The high contrast brings a lot of grit and darkness, and the contours also highlight a look that you would expect out of a comic book. I realize these compliments can sound a little hollow for some of you, given that my footage can seem a little flat, which is a side effect of another post-processing effect that's used a lot here. The game has a grain effect that plays a big role in blending the colors together to add more depth to the scene, but I sadly have to disable it because I like my videos to have a bitrate, and YouTube is going to completely destroy this game if I try to record it with a decent amount of grain. So my best advice is checking out footage from other people if you want to know what it looks like. Besides my amazement at the art style, there's also a lot of options for you to play around with. The harsh and saturated color palette is very important for clarity, but it might not suit your taste, or it could be an issue for you if you're colorblind. Thankfully, you have quite a selection of tones to choose from, and there is even a more realistic options to try out if you want a look that's less stylized. I personally prefer to stick with the default option, which got my eyes on the game in the first place, but it is nice to see how much you're allowed to tweak for yourself. It's a mostly smooth experience a majority of the time, but some machines can apparently struggle more than others and run it entirely on the CPU, which obviously causes less than adequate performances. When it comes to the soundscape of the game, I will say that the description of the soundtrack store page sums it up best. If by progressive rock you mean to say Mortal Sin has a very eclectic range of stylistic choices, then we can agree that we're talking about the same thing. And it isn't necessarily to say it's doing so in a bad way, but there are some decisions for the sound effects that I am still puzzled about. I wasn't expecting whatever that was. There are some moments that can almost feel cartoonish in an otherwise very consistent experience, tonally speaking. And the closest thing I can think of when these sounds make it to my ears is that I'm in front of a Hanna-Barbera series. These are the few outliers in an otherwise very punchy sounding game. The feedback during combat definitely sounds like you're dealing a lot of violent strikes. And I don't know if it's something to do with Mortal Sin, or if it's something my mind is making up, but I feel like the more enemies there are to punch, the more saturated the sound effect becomes. It might be unintentional, or I might be delusional, but I think it works. And then there is the music. Where do I start with the music? Well, from what I can tell, both Nikola and Mikko are credited as composers, so I couldn't tell you which one did what, although the purchasable soundtrack does feature beta version of the tracks you hear in-game, which could indicate some rearrangements. Anyhow, for what essentially seems to be their first notable work on a video game soundtrack, the result is equal to what you would expect given the tone of this review. I guess I was more right than I thought when I first brought up Ultra Kill. Granted, it is a widely different result. It sounds just as impactful as your attacks, and you'll definitely notice it when shit's going down. I'm really glad it doesn't get muddied in all the brawl happening on screen. Now, I want to try and talk a little more about the story of Mortal Sin, which includes not only what you discover as you progress, but also the final boss. I'm going to spoil your entire journey through the cycle, so meet me there if you want to stay blissfully ignorant while you play the game for yourself. Upon completing 3 areas, you can make your way to the Maw of Sin and defeat the final boss, the embodiment of Sin. The Maw itself is quite a difficulty spike, even with all you've seen for yourself. You'll be dealing with 2 arenas filled with a great number of elite enemies that you would normally only encounter at the end of previous areas or in small numbers during the trials. Making your way to the final area, which the mysterious entity named Enigmatic towers over, you'll be meeting the embodiment. For a final encounter, it's not exactly a difficult one, but its imposing size is something to be afraid of, and it also boasts a shield that only periodically goes off. In order to defeat it, you'll have to manage your footing too, as you'll be dealing with scares appearing on the floor, immobilizing you and damaging all of your equipment if you get caught. But as long as you parry the boss's attacks successfully, the embodiment of sin will be open for your assault and relatively incapable of doing anything to defend itself. Watch out for the flying skulls though, you can parry them, but it's still a bit risky. Once you've killed it, you'll be granted a token of sin, an invaluable resource that allows you to die and retry from the last save point. Because yes, if you thought it was over, you're sadly mistaken. Climbing up to the portal at the back, Elena will be waiting for you. She remains bothered with your common situation, recognizing your feat, but also informing you that it is but a step toward true salvation. In reality, the embodiment of sin is just an amalgamation stitched from the sins of humanity. A puppet, but not the source. Breaking the cycle of mortal sin will require more strength, both from you and Elena, who misses crucial parts of her memory and strength, which can only be recovered by completing quests that restore fragments of her identity. With that goal in mind, you need to help Elena gather more fragments and hope that she'll become powerful enough to face Enigmatic with you. For now, you can attain absolution through the portal behind her, knowing it is but a fleeting state and that the cycle will still continue. On your journey to restoring Elena's strength, she'll be able to tell you a bit more about the cycle and herself. Elena was kin to a people called the Torculans, amongst whom she was a powerful being. But just as humanity is full of greed and hubris, the Torculans are envious. Elena was cast into the realm of Enigmatic, a powerful being made manifest by humanity's sins. An entity as powerful as a god, yet rejected by humans. Its realm is filled with spawns of its own flesh who are drawn to the mortals. Sinners seem to be destined to travel to this place, which would make it an equivalent of hell, I suppose. It's never alluded to what Enigmatic gains from torturing souls for eternity, but I figure it's something along the lines of feeding off of their torment. Elena was cast away and became weaker as a result, but still made it her purpose to help mortals such as you. What she calls the Source seems to be an ineffable concept akin to what we'd call God. Perhaps it created this place, perhaps not. Its presence can be felt by Elena and is seemingly intertwined with the existence of Enigmatic. Torculans lauded purity, which they believed would take them closer to the Source. As a result, they reject sinners like us who fell prey to Enigmatic. The Guardian believes there is hope for us, however, and that despite being a sinner, we don't have to suffer eternally the torment of this godly being. Restoring her memories might be the path to finding a way to weaken Enigmatic. Even if we cannot destroy it for good, since it's more of a concept than a being, we might still be able to sever the link between it and the realm so that we may escape and perhaps save others from the same fate. As a penultimate reward, our angel is now fit enough to give us a most precious gift in the form of a sword. Retribution is an extremely good greatsword, which not only boasts great damage, but also allows you to regenerate when you parry. And believe me, you're going to need it, because it's far from over for you. In order to face Enigmatic himself, you'll need to meet multiple conditions. One of them is getting Elena to level 8, which grants you retribution, but you will also have to complete a run in which you participate to the 3 trials of resolve, while also selecting 3 different oaths. Conquer 3 areas, defeat each trial in between, and venture into the maw of sin to slay the embodiment once more. Doing so, Elena now stands proud at the gate, hoping that this was your last time destroying the puppet. As you ascend one final time to fight the source of torment, Elena assures you she'll be by your side to put an end to the cycle. Enigmatic senses your defiance and teleports you somewhere else. As you regain consciousness, you're met with an evil unveiled. Enigmatic stands tall with its hands covering its face. But in a final act of deception, it reveals a captive Elena, held prisoner by a spell. She will not assist you in this form. Enigmatic descends to the platform, holding you for a final punishment. And yes, I do mean punishment, because this fight is absolutely unbearable. Granted, I am talking about the 1.0 released version, Enigmatic is impressive, not only aesthetically, but also mechanically. I would have preferred that to be a positive descriptor. In its current form, the final boss rotates around the platform, invulnerable to your musings, until it deigns to descend to get attacked. Upon doing so, it can use 3 kinds of attacks. Using its hands, it can slam, slap, or shoot its finger at you and remove about half of your health and deal a lot of damage up to 4 pieces of equipment if you're blocking. Yes, if you're blocking, otherwise this attack is powerful enough to one-shot you. It can shake its head while casting a purple orb of destruction that one-shots you and can knock you off the platform even if you manage to parry it. Yes, it is an instant kill if you don't have a passive skill that sacrifices your armor to get you back. Its third attack is announced by the same hitshake, but allows it to fire 3 enormous beams of energy that can also one-shot you. This one can be avoided by simply moving out of the way, but your issue will be to tear it apart from the purple orb in the first place. Oh, and getting under certain amounts of HP allows it to summon a fucking immortal pursuer. Never mind, 2 of them actually. Combined with a gigantic health pool beyond anything you've seen until now, it's a tremendously hard encounter balance-wise. Suffice to say, this fight is horrible. The hand attacks are not the biggest hurdle. They are fairly easy to anticipate and parry, which is obviously what the game has been training you to do. The orb, on the other hand, is where your true issue lies, because even with a parry icon turned on, it's very hard to understand when you're supposed to block, because neither the visual or sound effects help determine the moment of impact. The pursuer is just salt on the wound in a fight where paying attention to the flying boss droning around is the main attraction. If you even manage to go 2/3 of the bar into the fight, the boss casts a spell that fragments the platform and turns the encounter into a parkour boss fight. And yes, you still die instantly if you miss a jump. Those of you who pay attention to my footage will notice that I'm not showing this final phase, and that's because I have never managed to go this far. In my opinion, the only thing that prevents Animatic from being impossibly hard is the token of sin you get from the previous boss, meaning you can technically retry it as much as you want. But I don't think it means very much, because sure, I am dealing a bit more damage with my 6th cycle Enigma Retribution Dragon Fist character, but I'm dying in one foul hit from the boss regardless. I tried going with a monk character with 290% damage at level 16, which is about the level you reach on a first cycle character, and I still wasn't dealing much damage and dying just as quickly. It's such a shame, because by the time you get through multiple cycles, you're cruising through the game. But the boss hits you like 10 walls of brick dropped on your head at the same time. I get that this is the final encounter and that you shouldn't be expected to first try it, but Animatic is lacking such balance that I don't think it's even worth it to go for the fight. I would honestly rather play through the entire game with loops or restart a new character with a different build idea in mind than to die and retry 100 times just to see the end screen. I think conceptually the fight can work, even if I'm not a fan of the head with hands design of the final boss. I just wish the damage wasn't so outrageous and that it was more visually communicative with its attacks. If that were the case, I think it would be enjoyable. You'd be able to enjoy the visual and musical spectacle instead of praying to whatever god in this world that you're not half a second late on your parry. In its 1.0 state, I cannot recommend you try and fight Animatic. I have seen the end screen through other few people's perspective, and you get a little closure from Elena, but nothing very ceremonious, which just adds on to the futility of your struggle. The story is honestly more of a backdrop to the core of Mortal Sin, which is its gameplay. It has a lot of elements going for it aesthetically and mechanically, but the story is very sparse, and the final boss doesn't feel to me like a worthwhile conclusion. It's very possible, given the overwhelmingly negative feedback on Animatic, that Nikola decides to change some elements of the fight. But I feel pretty sour right now, and I can't picture myself putting tens more of hours into the game just to get to the end screen, let alone fight this boss on Torment mode. So, should you play Mortal Sin? If you want a fast-paced dungeon crawler offering a very generous share of offensive tools and playstyles while enjoying a sick metal soundtrack and a visually impressive spectacle, I think I can only advise you to play it for yourself. If you're looking for a satisfying journey of redemption that rewards careful preparation and attention to its story, it's best you find something better suited to your taste. I think that despite being held back by some performance issues in its final encounter, Mortal Sin is an absolutely delightful experience with a lot of depth when it comes to its combat. It's perfectly fine to play the game with the sole purpose of having a good time chopping some heads off. Don't be like me, don't try to get the final boss on Torment achievement. Now, do yourself a favor and check the game's page for yourself, and check out the developer's Discord for more information about future editions. Nikola regularly posts about what he intends to do with the next updates, and even creates polls to know what people want to get their hands onto first. As for Mortal Sin itself, it's currently only available on Steam for about €25. Don't expect a sale quite yet, given how recent the release is. I think it is well worth your money, but I would understand your hesitation if you stuck with me through the whole review. I hope some future updates manage to fix the few issues with the game and refine it into the excellent, blood-soaked adventure that it aims to be. As for me, I think I'm about done with Mortal Sin for now, except perhaps the Torment achievement